Welcome, everybody, to Postgame Takeaways with Inside ND Sports. I'm Tyler James, fighting off sleep back at my apartment. He's the one and only Eric Hansen. We cover Notre Dame football, recruiting, and more for InsideNDSports.com on the Rivals Network. And we're here to share our postgame takeaways from Notre Dame's 17-14 heartbreaking loss to Ohio State. Eric, I don't know where you want to start here, but the floor is yours.
Well, it's hard not to start with 10 men on the field on the last two offensive plays for Ohio State. So that's where I'll start, but I have a lot more to say as takeaways besides that. I mean, I think we need like a better answer on Monday. I think, Marcus Freeman said he didn't want to risk a penalty, which would have moved the ball, 18 inches or whatever, which could be the difference in winning and losing a game. But also having 10 men on the field, how does that even happen? And then after a timeout, and then I believe Ohio State substituted between the second to last play and the last play, which means Notre Dame should have been able to bring somebody on to match that. And so that's a head scratcher. I don't want to get lost in just that, but I think those questions need to be answered better than they were Saturday night. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's inexcusable, inexplicable.
Those are the two adjectives I used.
They had Notre Dame had 11 men on the field before Marcus Freeman took the timeout. After Kyle McCord spiked the ball on 1st and goal at the 1 yard line, Notre Dame gets 11 guys in the field. Marcus Freeman didn't like what he saw. Apparently, calls timeout. They come back to the field with only 3 defensive linemen. Now, the 4 defensive linemen that were out before the timeout out on the field were Javonte Jean-Baptiste at defensive end, defensive tackles Riley Mills and Howard Cross the third. All those 3 were out in the field for the final 2 plays, but there wasn't a fourth guy. The fourth guy before the timeout was Gabriel Rubio. I don't know if Gabriel Rubio was supposed to be out there. It's normally a Viper defensive end position that we're missing if you're just going through Notre Dame's normal lineup. So I don't know who's to blame. Regardless of who was supposed to be out there, I don't know how Notre Dame goes 2 plays without a coach screaming their head off, figuring that out, that, hey, we don't have 11 guys out there. And like you said, between the incomplete pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. and the touchdown run, Ohio State ran Chip Trainum out fairly late in the play clock before that 3rd and goal touchdown run. And so when that happens, Notre Dame by rule is allowed to substitute. So that meant if Marcus Freeman is being transparent and that they didn't want a penalty, that they thought they were too late, that means they even noticed it after that happened, significantly after that, so they weren't in a position to get someone else on the field, which is sort of mind-boggling that Notre Dame could get to that place and not have 11 guys on the field in that situation. So, I mean, it's hard to – there are plenty of missed opportunities throughout the game, both, I think, on the player side and the coaching side, but it's hard not to feel like Notre Dame's coaching staff didn't let the Irish down in some way in this game. I thought even Notre Dame's last offensive possession sort of went sideways on a 1st and 10 running play when you got 2 running backs out there, which you don't do a ton of normally. Why are you getting cute in that situation? And the 2 running backs are Devin Ford and Jeremiah Love. How many plays have they been on the field together? I don't know what went wrong on that play, but it was just a sort of a strange situation. Sam Hartman just keeps the ball for a 5-yard loss. At least he protected the football, so that you can't be too mad about that. But that sort of threw everything off. They go for a screen on 2nd down, which stops the clock because it's incomplete. And then get conservative on 3rd and 15 with a run, which I don't know they had much choice on that play. But just a bizarre series of events coming after what seemed like the pivotal 4th down stop that Notre Dame needed at Ohio State's second to last drive on a 4th and 1 stop. But just kind of hard to fathom how it went all downhill from there for Notre Dame.
Right. So my grand takeaway is that, the sun's going to come up tomorrow and pretty soon here, as we're at 5:06 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I still think and this is not moral victory territory at all. This is about the bigger picture of the program and what I think can be taken out of it. I think the biggest lost opportunity here, and this was a lost opportunity in this game itself, would be to squander this 1-year layover that Sam Hartman has in South Bend.
Right.
And I think there's a lot there left to milk out of that, both by him and by Notre Dame. Deuce Knight was at the game tonight, a kid that they got a verbal commitment from, a number 26 player in the country, 2025 quarterback. I don't know necessarily that they get him if Sam Hartman's not running the offense this year. If it's Drew Pine or Tyler Buckner, I'm not sure this offense looks good enough to him to at least get him to commit at this point. But there's other things. I mean, I think the guy, if Notre Dame makes the most out of the rest of the season, I think Sam Hartman's going to be a big reason why, not only on the field, but in the locker room. So again, I think there's a lot out there. I also think one of the positives was so many times we've seen Notre Dame on this big stage and look like they didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Notre Dame increasingly in these top 10 matchups looks like they belong. Now they have to push the other team off the stage one of these times.
Right.
And they did that with Clemson last year, but they'll have another opportunity with USC. They have an opportunity with game day and all the hoopla down there. And one of the things we usually do this before I write my column. We're doing it after I write my column this time. They're going to have game day at Duke, but I mean, with the crescendo that was on campus the past 48 hours, whatever way the game went, there was going to be some kind of hangover Notre Dame had to get past. And this is going to be a real interesting week for Marcus Freeman, because I think he can really define who he is as a coach by the way they come out of this game. Such a bizarre game statistically where, Mitchell Evans and Rico Flores were almost more consequential to the game than Marvin Harrison Jr. And then Kyle McCord, I mean, you look at his stats, he's going to end up with a 111.2 pass efficiency rating, which is really not very good. And yet converts a 3rd and 10 on the last drive, a 4th and 7 on the last drive, and a 3rd and 19 after a intentional grounding call. I think the one thing that really negatively came out of this, besides the miscommunication, was Notre Dame has got to get home more on those blitzes and more on their pass rush. They never rattled that kid's confidence. I mean, his stats weren't very good. Mm-hmm. They'll still be a top 5 pass efficiency defense after facing Ohio State and some of the best wide receivers in the country. But they really needed to shake him up, and they didn't in this game. And he was poised going down the field to win that game.
Yeah, and it feels like Notre Dame, in its effort to try to put pressure on the quarterback, is losing some of its, or is using some of its manpower from the middle of the field, which is then opening up the middle of the field for the passing game to take advantage of. Whether it was Cade Stover or Emeka Egbuka, those guys were doing a lot of their work seemingly inside the hashes, inside the numbers, and that was where Notre Dame was able to, or Ohio State was able to pick up some ground in the passing game when they weren't able to have as much success as you would expect they would like to have with Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside. So it's encouraging to see how Notre Dame's outside cornerbacks played. I thought maybe the safeties and linebackers and nickelback coverage wasn't as great, and put Notre Dame in bad spots. Not just the coverage, but then those guys force you to miss tackles too, and Notre Dame wasn't good enough. I didn't think after the catch, and bringing those guys down. Certainly, at least on that 3rd and 19 to Igbuka at the end of the game, they at least took him down at the 1 yard line and made Ohio State have to earn that last touchdown. But other than
kind of earn it, 11 on 10.
Yeah, kind of earn it. Yeah, good point. I think overall it seemed like Notre Dame had enough talent to win, which is discouraging from the fact that you didn't win that, but it's encouraging to see the talent that you have in the program and how it has seemingly been elevated. Certainly, you can't ask Sam Hartman to do this again for you next season, but you certainly have the rest of this season, and it is not like this season isn't salvageable. You go and beat USC later this season. You finish the rest of the season with wins. It's hard to say that Notre Dame's not in the playoff. I would think, even if Clemson isn't necessarily the Clemson that we thought it would be, a win over USC and a 3-point loss to Ohio State would be a pretty good resume, I think, in the college football playoff big picture. But yeah, I think part of that talent to win, you see freshmen making plays, so that I think that's certainly a positive takeaway moving forward. You mentioned Rico Flores. Jeremiah Love, I thought, was very impressive at running back, 8 carries for 57 yards. Jaden Greathouse, who we come to expect to make plays, had 2 catches for 40 yards. And so just some more positive signs there for some of the skill positions, the young guys. And I thought the offensive line held its own. Notre Dame wasn't overpowering in the running game, which I didn't expect it to be. Couldn't really bust out some of the longer runs that you wanted. Audric Estime's being in and out of the lineup was sort of interesting. Like I mentioned on that play where Devin Ford and Jeremiah Love were in the game in a very critical situation. Audric Estime had just got an 11-yard run, and they took him out of the game. It's like, why aren't you riding Audric Estime with the game on the line? So sorry, I'm getting back to my first takeaway that coaching didn't do any Notre Dame favors tonight, but I think it's hard to avoid that with the way things ended up on the scoreboard for Notre Dame tonight.
The things that I liked about Marcus Freeman's coaching tonight was being aggressive. I mean, I mentioned this to you in the press box. Marcus doesn't even give the crowd a chance to weigh in on those 4th and 1s. He's already leaving the offense out there. I mean, there's no hesitation. The thing is, you got to execute those. And the play calling was a little bit odd with that last possession Notre Dame had after that huge 4th and 1 stop on the 11-yard line. But I like the thinking behind Marcus Freeman's that we're not going to play not to lose. We're going to be aggressive and play to win. But again, it came down to execution then, or maybe play design was off, but the idea was right behind it. I like who he's becoming as a head coach, but again, his next steps are really important in what he does with that loss. It's the same thing had they won. If they beat Ohio State and they lose to Duke and Louisville, what good did it do to beat Ohio State other than the recruits were happy for a week? But there were a lot of things I saw in this team that I liked. I agree with you with the I didn't necessarily think Notre Dame needed to win the lines of scrimmage, but they needed to have that be a draw at least. Mm-hmm. And to do that against, I mean, 5-star talent is basically what Ohio State has on that defensive line. I thought that was pretty impressive. So, we're not going to be talking about Rocco Spindler tomorrow and whether he needs to be replaced in the offensive line. I don't think. I guess we'll wait and review the film or look at the PFF grades. But, when we get done with this, I'm doing my Super 16 poll, and I'm not sure where I'll have Notre Dame, but I don't envision them dropping too much on my ballot or anybody else's ballots. And I think Ohio State will probably shoot up there. But, you know, I was impressed by both teams. And it was, you know, one of the most exciting 3-0 first halves that I've ever seen.
Yeah, a wild game. I mean, I think it surpassed in terms of games I've covered in person for wildest game. I think it surpassed the Florida State game where Notre Dame lost on the pass interference call in the end zone. That was a wild ending. This one's right up there. Obviously, both heartbreak for Notre Dame in both instances, but an incredible game. Certainly not the outcome Notre Dame wanted, but reasons, at least some reasons, I think, to believe that Notre Dame can continue to strive toward its goal at the end of the season and stay on the right path to get back where it wants to. So we'll see how that goes. Eric, I hope you have better luck counting to 16 than Notre Dame had counting to 11 at the end of the game. And that'll do it for our post-game takeaways. Make sure you check out the rest of our post-game coverage over on InsideNDSports.com. And have a great Sunday.